do our best. I'm just going to stop on a couple ones that I think is worth reminding you folks as we go into the next couple of days of doing this work and reviewing our goals and costs. One question we always ask every time we get the opportunity, and people are generally honest, and you folks have seen this a couple times, heard it a couple times, so I'm going to go ahead and ask. Who feels like they're an expert? I'll get that. That they know at the time. Just by show of hands. That's a hard question, I know, and this is a safe place, so I'm just curious. Who thinks they know a lot? That's not saying no one's an expert. I'm not even an expert.
I am.
I am.
All right.
I am.
Have you ever read the legislation?
All right. So now that we know who the experts are.
Had to get that one in.
Who thinks they know they got it relative?
He isn't.
You ain't. With local control funding formula, you're like, yeah, I get it.
He's not an expert.
Show of hands. All right.
He didn't say he read the
Okay, put those a little. Say, I signed up for this. I get it. It's going to go to the group. Who has a fair price? Show of hands. All right. Who's at who still feels like they struggle with this? I don't really understand what this whole LCFF is about and what we're supposed to do. Show of hands. All right, so it's a mix. It's growing a little by little.
We need to film this.
They're going up. And I remind folks every year that this is the
Most parents don't.
this is not going to be a one-year
He hasn't
thing.
even read the
So it's
legislation.
important for us to continue to check in.
That's the nail.
And I think that's what throughout this process, don't be afraid to ask those questions. And you don't really understand that. The one thing that I'm proud of from our school district perspective is that we have a lot of people now versed on LCFF. When we started this, last month, there would be a couple of us who could talk to the particulars. Now there's a lot of resources. So please, just another reminder, just don't ever be shy to ask this question. Even if you don't get it.
So I'm glad you caught that on film.
We gotta come Friday.
We definitely have to come right.
I'm just going to hit the highlights because I think the important thing. So that was just a history of how we got here. I don't think we go through the legislative history. Categorical programs. I think this is worth at least just taking a moment. So
They think this is. It's another categorical program.
We had 40 plus categorical specific programs that you got money from the state but had to spend it on a particular program. I'm sure a lot of you have heard our analogy about gift cards. That the state used to give us money, they would give us money, but in the form of a gift card, you can only spend it for that particular purpose and that particular
For a
purpose.
reason.
So please just listen, right? You will get the PowerPoints, we have them translated, so you will have this information before you as you're going through
Oh
your
my
work
God,
over the
you've
next
not translated this PowerPoint yet. Are you kidding me?
state local control, very important piece. When they talk about taking off the strings off of their gift cards, one of the main things about the intent of what the government was trying to accomplish
People for real.
is to provide the control to the community, to the school districts, to the community, and the goal there is to let the people who understand the students more make the decision. And this is part of the problem.
What would it take an hour to translate it by somebody who knew what they were doing?
They've been showing this PowerPoint for 3 months and they haven't translated it.
The best, and so this is local control.
I know that.
Overview, this is part of things to remember there. The acronyms, you'll hear a lot of acronyms throughout this. LCFF, Local Control Funding Formula. LCAP, as we're going to dive into. Local Control Accountability. That was going to give you the highlights on that. It's important to know that when we talk about LCFF, we're talking about state level. We're not talking about federal funds. We're not talking about Title I. This is the money that comes from the state. Title I is a whole different ballgame. We're still taking into account in terms of some of the services we provide, but these are the state dollars, which I would say are the majority of the dollars that we receive. Okay, what is LCFF? I think you've heard a lot. The 3 groups that we concentrate, right? I'm sure if we remember one thing, it's probably this one, right? The LCFF. That the state is now putting a specific emphasis on low-income students, foster youth, and English learners. So those are the 3 groups that are targeted under LCFF. Does that mean we don't care about any of the other groups and we don't take that into account? No, by no means. You'll see through the LCAP that there's specific emphasis, and the state asks the question and we respond. What are you doing for everybody? What are you doing for everybody? And once you answer that, what are you specifically doing for these set of students? So 3 groups are obviously very important to all of us, and we've already had a conversation about that. Talking about I won't go into too much detail there, but this is important. As some of the questions start coming up, how do you get money? How is this money that everybody's talking about that's supposed to be so great, how's it getting here? Why is it getting here? Very simple calculation. You don't have to know the particulars, but if you understand this, you got a good amount of it. That every child in LAUSD, doesn't matter wealth, doesn't matter what income level they are, every child will get an average base amount. That's going to differ depending on what grade they're at. So you can see, if you're in elementary, you're going to get a different amount than in high school, because high school students, it's more expensive to fund all the classes. So you're going to get a differentiated amount. Everybody gets a base amount. You make some modifications there based on what grade they are. And then if you fall into one of these three groups, the state gives us a little bit more money. That's the bottom line. You don't need to know the particulars. I know you'll hear supplemental, concentration, but if you don't remember anything else, every student in LA Unified is generating dollars that way. This is just a little more detail how that works. We'll have that in packet. This is important. I'm going to spend a moment here, and then, this is a bit of a reality check, and people don't like when we talk about this, but this is important as you engage in your group. You obviously heard from a panel about the needs that we have across the board, right? With fostering youth, with low income, with English learners. In many ways, those are separate needs, right? Just when you're targeting one, doesn't necessarily you're hitting on all the needs on the student that may fall into multiple categories. Here's the reality of the formula. We're only getting dollars for one. So even if a child falls into three of the categories, if they're an English learner, if they're low income, and they're foster youth, the state doesn't give us 3 cents of dollars. And I know that's hard to hear, and people get frustrated when they say that, because they say, wait a minute, we know that if a child is a foster student and low income and foster youth, they probably need more resources than somebody who just falls in one category. Unfortunately, that's not how the law is written, and that's not how we receive money. So for all our emphasis about putting programs into foster youth, into English learners, into low income, we don't get 3 separate funds. And you can see where I'm going with this, that there's not an infinite amount of resources here. LCFF is a very good thing, but it by no means completely changes the situation where now we have endless amount of money to dictate. And this is one of the tough parts, and I'm sure when we get into the conversation about programs and services, I think a lot of people, your reaction is going to be, well, it's not enough. We need more. We'll be the first ones to agree with you that we absolutely agree with. But it's a reality of what we're working with here. So we just ask you to take that into account, to be partners with us about priorities. And that's what we try to do in the self-capitalist plan. What are the priorities, knowing that there is limitations within what we can invest, right? And one thing I can't leave I can't take the mic without saying this, because this is going to be a long-term issue. LCFF had to do with how we give money out to all of our kids. Distribution. It doesn't necessarily address how much money is in that pot. California still has a big problem in terms of how much they fund schools. We're still close to last in the country in terms of per pupil amount. LCFF helps that in terms of giving the money to the neediest kids, but it didn't fundamentally change how much money we have. So, I think everybody gets this, that equity versus justice. I just talked about money. Again, I think the only thing to remember here is that it doesn't happen overnight. We gradually get more money over the 8 years, and it doesn't continue on forever. So again, you already heard my spiel about the reality, and yes, we're getting more funds, but it's not so much where we can do everything. Again, this is just a reminder that it's going to have to happen gradually, and we have to start looking at priorities. And I think that's what we need the help of this committee and this group to look at it from that lens, priorities. The one thing I'll spend 1 second on here, the second part of this, LCFF, what does it mean? Does it mean that every year you have to increase X amount of money for these three groups? Not necessarily. It's a nuance of that. Essentially what LCFF is asking us to do and says, look at these three groups. Look at English learners, low income, and foster youth, and think about how are you serving those kids as compared to all of your other students? That's different than just saying every year increase programs for these kids by X amount. That's not what LCFF does. It says look at this student population and think about how are you benefiting those kids as compared to all of those other students. That's another thing you have to think about in reviewing all the goals and the services and the recommendations from the district. I'll let Pedro give a quick recap on just the highlights of LCAP, and then we'll open it up to questions.
And it's going to be very brief, just in terms of time. I just want to keep things going. And I know that all of you have participated in one form of another training, and I've had some of these slides already presented to you. And then what I just really wanted to focus on is that Eder talked about how funds are being distributed to school districts and how they're targeting specific youth. But there's the other piece on how we're being held accountable for those dollars. And that's what's going to be before you today. And as we move forward with the agenda here is looking at the local control accountability plan. And there's going to be 3 components to that. It's the stakeholder engagement piece where we outline what types of efforts have taken place in the district to engage our community to really generate the priorities, the goals of the district in satisfying our local targeted efforts as well as the state priorities that I'll zoom through briefly. There's the other component. The other component is the goals and indicators piece. This is the meat of the local control accountability plan. So here, this is where we're going to spend most of this afternoon is actually reviewing 17 goals that are targeting these specific youth, all youth in the district, around English learner achievement, foster youth, overall student achievement in the district. Tomorrow, you'll be focusing around on the services and expenditures piece. So you've identified goals. We're going to be reviewing those today, but how are we supporting those goals through expenditures, programs, things that are taking place in the district? When we talk about going through these goals, keep in mind that the state has already kind of pre-selected 8 goals for all districts in the state. So a district has to take into consideration that there's 8 priorities that should be met, should be addressed in developing a local control accountability plan. And I'll just go through those briefly. Student achievement, the implementation of Common Core, how we're moving forward with implementing the Common Core. Student engagement, parental involvement, basic services, school climate, course access, and other student outcomes. So when we're looking at the just overall outcome, the goals that you're going to be reviewing, keep those in mind. You know, how is that goal targeted or tied to some of these state priorities? And they'll be noted in the template that is in front of you. And here is just an overall engagement kind of timeline as to what you should expect in the following month or 2 between now and June. In terms of engagement and getting input, providing your input and comments to the district, and getting feedback, providing feedback to district staff as we complete and try to finalize the local control
Sooner or
accountability.
later, these guys have to crash.
Today, we're actually doing one piece of it, and it's this right here, is presenting, kind of going over and reviewing the documents and give you the opportunity to provide feedback and comments. And it's going to be, as Rowena kind of stated, is kind of 2 phases. Right now, it's really kind of digesting the document and then coming back and allowing you to provide the questions and the comments that are necessary.
1-minute question.
And we'll actually take those comments and provide responses in writing as is required by state law.
Here's what's funny.
We're also going to be doing a public hearing on May 13th.
Legislation.
And there will also be another public hearing at the time of adoption in June. Because both documents have to be approved. It's the budget and the local control accountability plan. One of the important things is that we really want to highlight is at the end of the day, we're talking about overall engagement and really trying to engage our community continuously. This is a 3-year plan with annual updates. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here to continue the dialogue as we move forward, have something adopted, continue to get comments on the efforts around the local control accountability plan. And what I want to do now is just kind of open it up to questions because I know we're limited on time. This is an important piece of it. LCFF.lausd.net. So website, there's an opportunity for you to go on there and submit comments on the 3 different components of the local control accountability plan, as well as the superintendent's proposed investment list and budget plan that has been put out. So it's your opportunity to go on there and provide comments through another form beyond what we're doing here.
Did they start?
I know.
You started already?
Here comes the question numbers again. So we're going to pass out for 6, we're gonna go for 6, and for now, for 6 questions, and I know if there's an agreement, we can go into a little bit more of the time that Ms. LaGrossa set aside for the stakeholder engagement. So we just want to be honored the time here. So, did you pass out the 6? That way, Lisa, and there's a question over here.
Right here.
We don't need to do that with the Okay, okay,
Are we discriminating?
okay. Another question?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Is LAUSD discriminating?
We'll make sure that we get the questions all. Okay, question 1.
Who's going to answer your first question?
Microphone.
Make sure you get
I
reverse.
saw a slide.
Can't hear you.
I saw a slide, the questions went on. There's a differentiation between the state and the feds, correct? So, there's a clear understanding there that
Here we go. That's
Title 1 segment, which is categorical from the feds, is totally different from the state. Just want to make sure about that, because there are some schools that are mixing those ideas about everything together. Now, this is the question. In the global court, I saw a part where it said that parents are going to be trained. Who are those parents? And are you going to train every parent from every school? Because if you don't, then what I would see is that you train only 20 schools and you don't train over 600 schools, then we're going to have a problem. So is the district having a strategic plan to train every parent on the common core? Thank you.
So Common Core implementation is one of the priorities. Also, it is parent engagement. I mean, one would argue that getting parents trained on the Common Core is probably one of the biggest endeavors we have as a district. So there are a couple pieces. There was a separate Common Core budget that schools did get an allocation to use those dollars and then, develop their own programs to engage those folks. As part of our
There wasn't
overall
any
plan
current
here, that's something that
budget.
we need to think about.
Tell them
And,
the
in
truth.
terms of the question is,
Can't do that.
There's no money in the Common Core.
how we do that better. I think this would be an appropriate piece of the discussion.
Why is
There,
it not
it
being
is
done?
one of the state priorities. It's one of the things that the district intends to capture. In the plan, you'll see there is an investment on parental engagement. I think folks will say it's not enough. I'll revert back to my spiel about this is a down payment on what we really need. But I think that's one of the things that the group should think about what are, to the question I think happened, that came up in the last session, about what specifics, so it's 2 parts. There's a goal in the goal section, this is what we're intending to accomplish, and then in the actions and services, what are we going to do to meet that? So that should be part of the overall conversation we both have.
Number 2.
Good morning.
Did they give you a card? Did they give you a speaker card?
No, that's a question card. No, it's not. No, because they're going to answer them to you later. I know, but they said that's what they're going to do.
Because it seems to imply, the way I was understanding it, I think you're the person who's saying this.
Push it
It
on.
seemed to imply that the money that was to be looked at to see whether or not additional services, or including services, was being applied was to look at money year over year. My understanding of proportionality when I went back to the regulations and statutes is that it's supposed to be based on what percentage of dollars is being used over and above for the targeted populations as compared to the total allocation. So can you help me understand, if I'm looking at the same deck as yesterday, 9 and 10, it says that in 2014, 2015, the total LCA federal amount is $4.47 billion. Supplemental concentration amount is $837 million. So does that mean that proportionality, which currently is left blank, can you do the proportionality statewide blank in our LCAP and just say what is it, 28% for next year?
Yeah, so, and the percentage, so this is a very elite question, but a very important question. And hopefully, when we get to the budget piece, maybe we can spend a little more time on that. So this will take a couple of times to really
Run out of
try
battery.
to get it at the high level and spend more time on this. How the state regulation works is, at first, the state asks us, take an internal view of how much you're spending to benefit these kids today. So that's the first portion of the calculation. process that you look at how much money are you getting in the following year, you divide it by what you already did this percentage, then that's what you get an increase. So the budget numbers, and this won't mean anything without you folks actually having it in there. But the goal for this next year is that we have to spend $837 million on these kids, on these groups. So that is an increase. What I was trying to get at is that LCFF doesn't necessarily say all of the new dollars that you get, you have to increase these programs by just that X amount. It's kind of this proportionality calculation. So you look at what you're doing now, you take into account how many more dollars you're getting, and then there is a calculation that the state will ask us. This is the minimum that you should be investing in those kids. So that's a little complicated. In the budget conversation, maybe we'll spend a little bit more time on that because
where I want to see it.
and in the LCAP, we'll actually try to define how is it that we're recommending
one
to get
plug over
to
there.
that minimum requirement.
Number 3?
Okay, there has been mentioned that parents are going to be engaging and they will get trained for the common core for their independent center and mission school. But recently in my school, I found out that LAUSD is cutting funds for parents and their representatives. How does that happen then? If they're cutting it 50% off?
Well, you see, there might be a couple things going on